Hey, it's Zane here, and happy Friday to you. Hope you're doing well wherever you may be. Today I wanted to share some thoughts. I don't usually talk too much about financial well-being, but I think it's really relevant in these times. And, maybe you have been affected by inflation in recent times. I know a lot of people who have. I've certainly noticed it myself, the cost of living pressures. We've seen mortgage rates go up, an unprecedented number of mortgage rate rises over the last 18 months or so. Rents are out of control, you name it. And so really, anybody who's trying to get ahead in this environment, unless they're doing some really prudent things with their money, they're really going to struggle in the times ahead. And I spent a lot of time listening to some amazing commentators who have been around the block a few times and who really understand the state of the financial system and where we are in the life cycle of it. And the general consensus really seems to be that we're at the end of a global monetary experiment, which essentially began some 50 years ago when President Nixon took America off the gold standard, and pretty much all of the Western nations followed suit. And so what we have now is a situation where people are working exponentially harder for a currency that is growing exponentially weaker. Now, what do I mean by that? If you think back to, say, 1972, which was the year that I was born, the average Australian household, it would take them 2 to 3 years worth of income to own a median priced Australian home. So 50 years ago, 2 to 3 times annual wage was enough to buy the average family home in Australia. Here we are 50 years on, and it now takes us 10 to 12 years worth of income to purchase outright the average Australian home. So asset prices, real estate prices, property prices have gone like that, and yet the income and the wages have basically been left behind. And this is something that happens by stealth. It happens very, very gradually so that people don't notice. But this is the inherent flaw with the private Western central bank system that is essentially backed by nothing. Fiat currency, the word fiat means by decree, which basically means it only exists because the population at large puts their faith and trust in the government and the central banking system of the day. And I think it was Henry Ford that once said that, if people understood how the private Western central bank system really worked, there'd be riots on the streets by lunchtime tomorrow. And, gradually now people are starting to educate themselves on the history of money, on this central banking system, which basically was formed in the US in I think 1913, which was the exact same year that the IRS was formed. The Australian equivalent is the Australian Reserve Bank, and of course the ATO. But all of these three-letter agencies are all very much tied historically to the private Western central banking system, which basically it has a hold of the people. And so what is so important for anybody who is wanting to be sovereign and to protect their purchasing power and to protect their wealth, not just for themselves, but for the generation coming next, their kids and their grandkids, is to really consider where they're placing their money. I mean, anybody who's storing their value or storing their purchasing power or their wealth right now in a bank, in currency, is really doing themselves a grave disservice, because the hurdle rate alone, just to stay in front of, they'll tell you that we're operating at 5 to 7% inflation, when historically we should be around 2 to 3%. But the reality is, since 2020, everything's been accelerated. And the hurdle rate is more like 15 to 17, even up to 20% inflation. I mean, you've only got to consider house prices in 2019 compared to now, post health crisis, and what you'll find is that in most areas around Australia, those house prices have at least doubled. in most areas, certainly in all of the desirable areas. So anybody who had enough savings in 2019, a deposit to buy a home, who did not act before March 2020, those people have now been set back 10, 15 years in terms of their purchasing power, because they can no longer buy the same quality home that they could have bought in 2019, just 4 years later. So all of this really highlights the fact that you and I need to be proactively protecting our purchasing power. We need to be protecting our future wealth, because if you don't do it, it's going to be absolutely crushed in the time ahead. And I guess the natural question is, where do we put our money? And a lot of people, right now, they've been priced out of the housing market. They can no longer afford to place their money into real estate. The banks have really tightened up, so it's a lot harder to get a loan these days. And so we then need to look at other vehicles or tools for protecting purchasing power. Historically, for 5,000 years, the best store of value on earth has been gold. That really will never change. I mean, if you were to look at, in 1930, for example, the price of an average men's quality suit was about 1 ounce of gold, which at the time I believe was about $32 per ounce of gold. Here we are, 90 odd years later, and that 1 ounce of gold, which is worth about 2,800 Australian dollars now, could even be closer to 3,000, is about the same value, quality men's suit that you could buy now with that 1 ounce of gold, in dollar terms. So purchasing power, long-term time horizon, protecting your value, storing value, gold has been it. The next best way to store value has been silver. A lot of people believe that silver has a lot more upside than gold in the short term from here. Historically, the ratio of silver to gold has been a lot tighter than it currently is, meaning that silver has a lot more upside in terms of how many multiples it could do over the next 2 to 3, 4 years. So a lot of people are also putting their money into silver, and you can also buy smaller denominations of silver, which I think is a really intelligent thing to do, particularly when we're in a geopolitical environment such that we could be on the cusp of World War III. We know in times of world crisis, hard assets that you can put your hand on, such as gold, such as silver, barterable items, can become very, very valuable, particularly if there is a capital controls instilled in the banks, which is very easy for them to do now, to say that ATMs are all shut down, you can no longer withdraw money from your bank account. This is all due to instituted by world crisis, and we saw through the health crisis of 2020, 2021 that they can basically pull whatever tricks they like, and people have to go along with it. So this is just something for you to keep in mind. It's not about being doom and gloom or being pessimistic. Obviously, we need to control what we can control, but we also have to be very open minded about the reality of the situation we're in right now, and take prudent steps individually to protect ourselves. I also believe wholeheartedly and heavily invested in Bitcoin. I believe that obviously it's been the best performing asset by a country mile over the last 12 years. Comparing it to everything, the S&P 500, the ASX, gold, silver, real estate, nothing has outperformed Bitcoin. And I believe it's just going to continue. And not only that, it's decentralized, it's completely portable. It's something you're your own bank. It's something that you control through a set of private keys that you have written down or memorized in your head. And it enables people to just transfer value without an intermediary, and that, I believe, is going to be very, very powerful moving forward as well. So really my message today is to get yourself educated. Be aware that we're in a very changing environment right now. A lot of people are going to get left behind. A lot of people are going to basically be at the whim of socialist policies, UBI, Universal Basic Income. You've probably heard about the 2030 Great Reset agenda. And everything points to this simply because countries around the world are broke. The debt-based system has reached its limits. America right now, about every 100 days, an extra $1 trillion in debt. They're already up to $34 trillion now. Again, everything has been accelerated since 2020, and God only knows where things are going in the short term with the US election about to happen. All the crazy things going on around that, and trying to arrest a political opponent or to imprison a political opponent. The leader that the people want, who the polls suggest 70 to 80% of the country wants as their leader, they're trying to put in prison. So against all of this backdrop, we've just got to be intelligent, we've got to be smart, we've got to take the right steps, we've got to be proactive. And I can't tell you what to do. It's not financial advice, but certainly I believe that all of us owe it to ourselves and our future and the future of our families to start doing what we can to protect our sovereignty, our purchasing power, and our wealth. And that involves, to some extent, being outside the system, because historically we've seen in times of crisis they can do whatever they want to shut things down. And this time around, with a population that's unprepared, it could lead to social unrest and a lot of other problems that we haven't seen before. So my message is, get educated, be proactive, and be financially intelligent in these crazy times. Thanks for listening. This is Zane signing out. I'll see you really soon. Bye for now.